It was supposed to be a routine business trip for Michael Carter, a black CEO whose company owned some of the most prestigious hotels in the country. But when he arrived at the Grand Meridian Hotel in downtown Chicago, expecting a warm welcome, he was met with suspicion, hostility, and an unceremonious escort out the door by security. 20 minutes later, Michael walked back into the lobby, flanked by his legal team, and turned the tables, firing the entire staff on the spot for their blatant discrimination and incompetence. What unfolded that afternoon would become a story whispered about in the hospitality industry for years. Michael Carter was no stranger to high-pressure environments. At 47, he'd built Carter Hospitality Group from a single boutique hotel in Atlanta into a portfolio of luxury properties across the United States. His success came from a sharp mind, relentless work ethic, and a knack for spotting potential where others saw risk. A Morehouse graduate with an MBA from Wharton, Michael had navigated boardrooms and negotiations with ease, but he'd also faced his share of prejudice. He'd learned to brush off microaggressions, focusing on his goals rather than the occasional sideways glance. But what happened at the Grand Meridian wasn't a microaggression. It was a full-blown insult. Michael had arrived in Chicago that morning for a surprise inspection of the Grand Meridian, one of his company's flagship properties. He'd acquired the hotel 2 years prior, turning it from a fading landmark into a 5-star destination. The visit wasn't on the staff's radar. He preferred unannounced checks to see how his properties operated without the polish of prepared visits. Dressed in a tailored navy suit but no tie, Michael carried only a leather briefcase and his phone. His flight had been delayed, so he was tired but focused when he stepped into the hotel's gleaming marble lobby at around 2 p.m. The Grand Meridian was a sight to behold, with its crystal chandeliers, polished floors, and staff in crisp uniforms bustling about. Michael approached the front desk, where a young woman named Emily was typing at a computer. "Good afternoon," he said, offering a polite smile. "I'm here to check in." Emily barely looked up. "Name?" she asked, her tone clipped. "Michael Carter," he replied, pulling out his ID and company credit card. Emily glanced at the ID, then at him, her expression shifting to something Michael couldn't quite place. Skepticism, maybe. "One moment," she said, tapping at her keyboard. After a pause that stretched too long, Emily frowned. "I don't see a reservation under that name. Are you sure you're at the right hotel?" Michael's brow furrowed. He'd made the reservation himself through the company's internal system, a perk of being the CEO. "There should be a suite reserved for Carter Hospitality Group," he said calmly. "Can you check again?" Emily's lips pursed. "I've checked. There's nothing here. Maybe try the Meridian and down the street? It's more budget-friendly." The implication hung in the air, and Michael felt a familiar knot in his stomach. He'd heard that tone before, the one that assumed he didn't belong. "I'm certain this is the right hotel," Michael said, keeping his voice even. "I'd like to speak to the manager." Emily hesitated, then picked up a phone and murmured something. A moment later, a man in his 50s with thinning hair and a name tag reading Richard, general manager, appeared. "What's the issue?" Richard asked, looking at Emily rather than Michael. She gestured vaguely. "He says he has a reservation, but there's nothing in the system." Richard finally turned to Michael, his eyes scanning him from head to toe. "Sir, we're a high-end establishment. If you don't have a confirmed reservation, I'm afraid you'll need to leave." Michael's jaw tightened. He wasn't just a guest. He owned the damn place. But he'd dealt with enough situations like this to know that escalating wouldn't help yet. "I'm the CEO of Carter Hospitality Group," he said, his tone firm but controlled. "This is my hotel. Check the executive system, and you'll find my reservation." Richard blinked, then let out a small, dismissive laugh. "I'm sure you believe that, sir, but we can't just let anyone claim they're the CEO. Do you have proof?" Michael pulled out his phone, ready to show emails from the corporate office. But Richard waved a hand. "No need for that. If you're not in the system, you're not staying." Security. 2 uniformed security guards appeared, both burly and stone-faced. Michael took a deep breath, his years of navigating corporate battles keeping him calm. "This is a mistake," he said. "You're about to regret this." Richard smirked. "I doubt that. Please escort this gentleman out." The guards flanked Michael, one placing a hand on his shoulder. Michael shrugged it off, holding up his hands. "I'm leaving," he said, his voice low, "but I'll be back." He walked out, the lobby's heavy glass doors closing behind him with a thud. Outside, Michael stood on the sidewalk, the Chicago wind cutting through his suit. He was angry, furious even, but he wasn't surprised. He'd faced this kind of treatment before, from skeptical board members to condescending vendors who assumed he was a help. But this was different. This was his hotel, his legacy, and they just humiliated him in front of guests and staff. He pulled out his phone and dialed his chief of staff, Lauren Brooks, who was based at the company's Atlanta headquarters. "Lauren," he said when she picked up, "I need you and the legal team in Chicago. Now." "I was just thrown out of the Grand Meridian." Lauren didn't miss a beat. "What? By who?" Michael recounted the incident, his voice steady but laced with indignation. Lauren was already moving. "I'm booking flights. I'll have legal and HR there in 2 hours. What do you want to do?" Michael glanced back at the hotel's gleaming facade. "I'm going back in," he said, "and I'm cleaning house." He hung up, then called his attorney, David Gwynn, who was based in Chicago. "David, meet me at the Grand Meridian in 20 minutes. Bring the ownership documents and employment contracts. We're terminating the staff." Michael didn't waste time. He walked to a nearby coffee shop, ordered a black coffee, and sat by the window, watching the hotel. His mind raced, piecing together what had just happened. The staff's behavior wasn't just incompetence. It was discrimination, plain and simple. They'd looked at him, a black man in a suit, and decided he didn't belong, reservation or not. He'd seen it in Emily's eyes, in Richard's smirk, in the way the guards moved too quickly to escort him out. But they'd made a critical error. They didn't know who they were dealing with. 20 minutes later, Michael walked back into the Grand Meridian's lobby, this time with David and Gwynn at his side. David, a sharp-eyed attorney in his 30s, carried a briefcase stuffed with legal documents. The same staff was at the front desk, and Emily's eyes widened when she saw Michael return. Richard was there too, chatting with a guest. He froze when he spotted Michael, his face paling. "Sir, I told you." Richard started, but Michael cut him off. "No, you listen," he said, his voice carrying across the lobby. "I'm Michael Carter, CEO of Carter Hospitality Group. This is my hotel, and you're all done here." The lobby went silent. Guests waiting to check in turned to watch, their phones already out, sensing something big. Emily stammered, "But we didn't know." Michael held up a hand. "You didn't ask. You assumed, and you were wrong." David stepped forward, opening his briefcase and pulling out a stack of papers. "These are the ownership records for the Grand Meridian, naming Michael Carter as the principal owner through Carter Hospitality Group," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "And these are your employment contracts, which include a clause allowing immediate termination for gross misconduct, including discrimination." Richard tried to interject. "This is outrageous. You can't just..." But Michael wasn't having it. "You threw me out of my own hotel," he said, his voice like steel. "You profiled me, disrespected me, and put your hands on me. That's not how we do business." He turned to David. "Read the termination notice." David cleared his throat and began, addressing the staff gathered in the lobby, Emily, Richard, the security guards, and a handful of bellhops and concierges who'd wandered over. "Effective immediately, all current staff of the Grand Meridian Hotel are terminated for violation of company policy, including but not limited to discriminatory conduct and failure to verify guest credentials.